Christmas Day 1989. A concrete wall at a Romanian military garrison becomes the final destination for one of history's most reviled dictators. Nicolae Ceausescu and his wife Elena face a firing squad assembled from volunteers, soldiers eager to pull the trigger on the tyrants who had tormented their nation for decades. What unfolds in those final moments is a shocking culmination of power, paranoia, and people pushed past their breaking point. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping story of revolution and retribution, smash that subscribe button right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss another mind-blowing episode from Fleek of History. Trust me, you're about to witness one of the most dramatic downfalls in modern history, and you don't want to miss what's coming next on this channel. The rise of a tyrant Nicolae Ceausescu didn't start as Romania's supreme leader. He clawed his way up through the brutal world of communist politics. Born in 1918, this young activist joined Romania's communist youth movements and quickly proved his dedication. His commitment came at a price: imprisonment in 1936, then again in 1940 for his revolutionary activities. Behind bars, fate intervened when Ceausescu met Gheorghe, a communist leader who would eventually rule Romania and become his political mentor. In 1939, Ceausescu married Elena Petrescu, another committed communist who would later become his partner in both power and downfall. As World War II raged in August 1944, Ceausescu escaped prison and immediately accelerated his political ambitions. When communists seized control of Romania in 1947, Ceausescu positioned himself strategically, working his way through government positions from the Ministry of Agriculture to Deputy Minister of Armed Forces, even achieving the rank of Major General. By 1955, he secured a full-time position in the Politburo, managing the party's organizational structure. When Gheorghe died of cancer in 1965, he had already designated Ceausescu as his successor. On July 24, 1965, Nicolae Ceausescu officially became the leader of Romania's Communist Party. The dictator's iron grip initially, Ceausescu appeared different from typical Soviet puppets. He challenged Moscow's authority, withdrew Romania from active participation in Warsaw Pact operations, and condemned the Soviet invasions of Czechoslovakia and Afghanistan. Romanian citizens initially celebrated him as a nationalist hero who dared stand up to the Soviet Union. President Richard Nixon even visited Romania in 1969, courting this maverick communist leader. In 1974, Ceausescu elevated himself to president of Romania, consolidating absolute power. But behind the facade of independence lurked a ruthless authoritarian regime. Ceausescu's secret police crushed freedom of speech, tortured dissenters, and operated a surveillance state that made neighbors fear neighbors. Anyone who questioned the regime vanished into prisons where brutal interrogations awaited. The dictator's grandiose building projects in the 1970s plunged Romania into catastrophic debt. Desperate to repay foreign creditors, Ceausescu exported virtually all of Romania's agricultural and industrial production, leaving his people to suffer. Fuel shortages became routine. Medical supplies disappeared. Food grew scarce. Romania's standard of living plummeted to among the lowest in Europe. Meanwhile, Ceausescu constructed a cult of personality around himself and Elena, who had risen from a secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to become the second most powerful person in the nation. In March 1980, Elena became first deputy prime minister, wielding enormous influence. Propaganda portrayed her as the mother of the nation, though insiders knew her as more ruthless and power-hungry than her husband. She was so self-conscious about her prominent nose that she banned profile camera angles. The spark that ignited revolution, December 16, 1989. In the western city of Timișoara, authorities attempted to forcibly evict Laszlo Tokes, a Reformed church pastor who had spoken out about human rights and the persecution of Romania's Hungarian minority. Romanian security forces arrived at his church expecting routine compliance. Instead, they encountered hundreds of citizens surrounding the building, determined to protect the pastor. Security forces deployed water cannons against the crowd, but rather than dispersing, more people joined the protest. The demonstration rapidly spiraled beyond the original cause, Anger that had simmered for years under Ceausescu's oppressive regime exploded into the streets. Anti-government and anti-communist chants echoed through Timișoara. On December 17th, the military opened fire on protesters. 73 people died in Timișoara between December 16, with reports of bodies being secretly transported to Bucharest for cremation to hide the massacre's scale. On December 18th, tens of thousands of industrial workers peacefully joined the uprising. By December 20th, Timișoara had declared itself the first free town, though the victory came at a terrible cost: 130 reported deaths and 3,352 wounded. News of the Timișoara massacre spread like wildfire across Romania despite the regime's attempts at censorship. More cities erupted in protest. The revolution Ceausescu had long feared was becoming reality. The dictator's fatal miscalculation while Timișoara burned, Ceausescu bizarrely departed for a state visit to Iran, leaving Elena to manage the escalating crisis. Martial law was declared. Curfews were imposed. Armed forces roamed the streets. But the protests only intensified, now explicitly targeting the Ceausescu regime and communism itself. Protesters ripped the communist coat of arms from Romanian flags, creating a powerful symbol of resistance. Some of these brave individuals were shot dead by security forces. When Ceausescu returned from Iran, he remained delusionally confident he could suppress the uprising with one speech. On December 21, 1989, the dictator organized a massive rally in Bucharest, summoning 100,000 people to hear him denounce the protests. The regime bussed in supporters, distributed Romanian flags and Ceausescu portraits, carefully choreographing what should have been a show of strength. Instead, it became the moment that sealed his fate. As Ceausescu spoke, heckling erupted from the crowd. Jeers and boos drowned out his words. Then came an enormous roar of support, not for the dictator but for the revolution. Ceausescu's expression shifted from confidence to visible panic as he realized he had lost control. The speech was being broadcast live across Romania, and millions watched their once feared dictator looking helpless and desperate. Gunshots rang out. The crowd scattered in terror. Reports indicated security services had fired on their own citizens. The regime's propaganda masterpiece had transformed into a public relations disaster broadcast to the entire nation. Ceausescu and Elena were rushed back inside the building as chaos consumed the streets. December 22nd dawned with Bucharest in open revolt. That morning, Defense Minister Vasile Milea died under suspicious circumstances, likely executed for refusing Ceausescu's orders to fire on protesters. The new defense minister, Victor Stănculescu, also refused, later stating he faced the prospect of two execution squads, Ceausescu's and the revolutionary one. The flight and capture at 9:30 a.m. on December 22nd, with hundreds of thousands of protesters converging on central Bucharest, the Ceausescus made their desperate escape. They fled to the roof of the Central Committee building, where Nicolae's personal pilot waited with a helicopter. The pilot later described the scene. Then Stelica, the co-pilot, came to me and said that there were demonstrators coming to the terrace. Then the Ceausescus came out, both practically carried by their bodyguards. They looked as if they were fainting. They were white with terror. The helicopter was designed for 4 passengers, but carried 6. With Elena Ceausescu squeezed between chairs and the door, as demonstrators rushed across the terrace, just seconds behind them. The helicopter landed at Snagov, where a unit commander delivered crushing news. There has been a revolution. You are on your own. Good luck. Abandoned by their protectors, the Ceausescus attempted to flee by car. A doctor picked them up, but feigned mechanical problems. Local police arrested the fugitive dictator and his wife, transporting them to the Târgoviște garrison military compound. The trial and execution Christmas Day, 1989. At 5:30 a.m., Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu were taken by armored personnel carrier to face an extraordinary military tribunal. The trial lasted approximately 1 hour, a rushed proceeding that many criticized as a predetermined show trial. Nicolae attempted to defend himself by arguing the tribunal violated Romania's 1965 constitution, insisting only the Great National Assembly could remove him from power. He claimed the proceedings were a Soviet-organized coup d'etat. Elena and Nicolae both refused to recognize the court's authority. The charges were severe: genocide resulting in 60,000 deaths throughout their regime, organizing armed forces to fire upon civilians, destroying public property, and causing irreparable damage to Romania's national economy. The tribunal found both guilty on all charges and sentenced them to death. At 2:50 p.m. local time on December 25, 1989, Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu were led to an execution site at military unit UM-37, firing squad assembled from 8 paratroop regiment. Soldiers, selected from 20 eager volunteers, waited for them. Nicolae declared, "We could have been shot without having this masquerade." Their hands were bound. Elena screamed at the executioners, "You sons of dogs!" As they stood against the barracks wall, Nicolae began singing a communist anthem. The firing squad opened fire immediately, so quickly that the television crew present to document the execution barely captured the final shots. One soldier later claimed he was the only one who switched his rifle to automatic, asserting his bullets killed the Ceausescus. The rushed execution was designed to prevent any rescue attempt by remaining loyalists. The bodies were covered with canvas and buried in a cemetery. Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu became the last people executed in Romania before capital punishment was abolished. The revolution's toll. The Romanian Revolution claimed over 1,100 lives. According to the Institute of the Romanian Revolution, 71 victims died between December 17, 22, then 715 between December 27, 25, the majority killed after the dictator's escape. Another 113 died after December 25th. Out of all casualties, only 159 were killed by Ceausescu's security forces. The remaining deaths resulted from what researchers called unsolved terrorist phenomena and lack of professional crisis management. The revolution that began in Timișoara with protests over a pastor's eviction transformed into a nationwide uprising that toppled one of Europe's most entrenched communist regimes. Romania's Christmas Revolution marked the violent end of 42 years of communist rule and became the bloodiest of the anti-communist revolutions that swept Eastern Europe in 1989. Years later, Nicolae Ceausescu, who became the first leader of Romania's revolutionary forces and later served twice as president, described the hasty trial and execution as quite shameful but necessary. The Ceausescu's deaths remain controversial, a stark example of revolutionary justice that denied due process while ending a brutal dictatorship. Against that barracks wall in Târgoviște, Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu's reign of terror ended in a hail of bullets, their dictatorial dynasty collapsing. In just 3 chaotic days, from a disastrous speech to desperate flight to revolutionary execution. That's the shocking true story of how Romania's dictator met his brutal end on Christmas Day. If this blew your mind, you need to subscribe to Fleek of History right now. We're bringing you the most intense, jaw-dropping moments from history that they don't teach in school. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling us what historical event we should cover next, and share this video with anyone who loves real history. Remember, history isn't boring when you know the real stories. We'll see you in the next episode of Fleek of History.